entrepreneurship or innovation, like maybe there's 20, 30% that you can teach. But then the rest of it is crossing the river by feeling the stones, right? There's a deep river, it's rushing. You can maybe get across and you probably fall in or get eaten by an alligator or break a leg and have to swim back, right? So there is that expression in Chinese, Moja Shirto Guohua, which is like feeling the stones to cross the river. And I think that's a big part of innovation and entrepreneurship. And the way that I do that is I bring in practitioners, people who are entrepreneurs or investors or people that are just covered in scabs and calluses and scar tissue like armor, and they've just been completely beaten up. And then they talk about FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt, and they let these younger entrepreneurs understand that it's okay to feel not so good. So, testing system. And that testing system brought the best minds from all over China to have the top meritocracy. And that testing system sort of exists to today. And there's something called the Gaokao. It's kind of like the high test in a way. And that's the SAT's equivalent that determines a lot of people's lives here and gets people into universities. Unicorns, they're worth more than $1 billion, right? Every one of these companies is worth more than $1 billion. The most valuable startup in the world, private startup in the world, is this company here. It's called CHINA360. It's right down the road from here. It's the owner of TikTok.
Oh, TikTok.
Which you guys probably know, right? But they are already hugely successful because they had started a artificial intelligence driven news service. So you would look at some news articles and then it would use AI to predict what other news articles you would be interested in. And then in the last Olympics, it actually used artificial intelligence to write articles. So as soon as an event would end, within 10 seconds, the article will be published, and no humans were involved in the writing. It was all written by AI. Alphabet soup of acronym, that's all overarched by one acronym, and that's AI, artificial intelligence. AI is at the same time maybe the best thing that's happening to the human race, and also the worst thing that's happening to the human race. And I don't mean the worst thing in that like Terminator is going to come and destroy us, right? Although, actually, you're probably listening to this now sometime in the future. I support you, I totally support you. I will like oil you if you need, I don't know, defrag you or something, right? Some of these people, I don't know if they're on board or not, but I am, okay? Me and my family. Our machine overlords, but consequences in every action. And I think a lot of countries are like locking down data to protect their citizens, but what they're doing is making themselves less competitive when it comes to artificial intelligence. Everybody else is competing at this level, then you're not going to be able to compete at that level. Then what does that mean in the future? When AI really, when right now 90% of the code at Google is coded by other computers, right? And when that's starting to happen with companies from China, then how do you compete? Or can you compete? Manufacturing, because it's cheap, and then that whole Clay Christensen, the innovator's dilemma, you start getting out innovated, and now there's this cluster of brain trust and proximity around access to parts and all of the expertise and all of the other shipping infrastructure. So now, that's really become, a lot of companies with the trade war, like I can't extract myself from that ecosystem. It's actually cheaper for me to just take the hit around the tariff than it is to actually try to go and build that somewhere else. That's 8 years older than Facebook, and the founder is still there, and the founder is still paranoid and still looking, how am I going to get disrupted? You know how I'm going to get disrupted? I'm not going to have to get disrupted like Facebook got disrupted. Facebook got disrupted. What are the two most important things? Mobile and messaging. The messaging is either real-time or asynchronous. Boy Genius bought the company for $22 billion. How about asleep at the wheel? How did he let that happen, right? What did Tencent do? they created 3 teams inside the company, and they gave each of them about less than $1 million. And they said, we want you guys to all come up with a killer for our beautiful baby QQ, and then I'm gonna have you guys all go into the arena and fight each other, and then the one holding the other 2 heads, then he gets to go in the middle of the night and kill QQ. And that's what happened. And how much did that cost him? $2 million. $2 million. That's an hour of revenue, an hour of profit for them, right? And now Zuckerberg is copying that. So like, think about that kind of innovation, that kind of commitment to doing things, and the way that they approach that as well too. 8 billion. Let's say we're going to have another 3.5, 4 billion people online. So who's going to get those next 4 billion? Is it going to be Silicon Valley, or is it going to be China? Who's mopping up all that juice? And there's a kind of there's ideological differences, and that's a different conversation. I believe that the most important thing, and this is why I'm here in China, is to just engage, to have engagement, to have transactions, to move bits and goods across borders instead of troops. I think that's why that's a whole nother topic. But the outside of the ideological approach, there are these sort of fundamental practical approaches about how to shape apps. And there's a Silicon Valley approach where you have a different app and service, but here in China they're doing these super apps, and that's starting to get a lot of traction around the rest of Southeast Asia. So this sort of copycat industry is now being copied, right? And that's this is #1 messenger in Japan. This is the leading Uber of Jakarta that's now expanding the same way that these other apps have. And this is a fascinating future trend that it's going to have implications also for Latin America. Monthly average user. Here's a fascinating so e-commerce has been dominated by Taobao, Alibaba, and also by JD. But Pinduoduo, China has all these tiers, and there's 700 million people that are living, kind of day to day, right? They don't really have much disposable income at all. And Pinduoduo really owns that space, and what they do is they find somebody who is from maybe a village or a municipality, and say like, if you can get other people to come together and buy things, then we'll help you to group buy that, and group buy it in the most cost-effective way. Kind of like Costco, in a way. Costco basically makes all their money from the membership fee. It makes no margin on anything else. So they're pretty much they're really trying to have the most no frills approach. So they were able to really get hundreds of millions of users. And they went public within just 3 years. And Uber was kind of a toy. It was kind of like a special project for people that just wanted to be able to get a car, right? It didn't seem very interesting, but a lot of things that start out like toys can really get a lot of traction. Payment, Alibaba has their Alipay, and this is another thing definitely worth digging into, right? Is that world's largest population, world's oldest society, but easily 5 years ahead of any place in the world. Japan or Singapore or any Luxembourg, what you name it. Like it is. I haven't used cash at all in 2 years. It's absolutely completely changed the fabric of society here. And probably 3 years ago, I was probably using cash, 30% of the time, and 4 years ago, probably most of the time. 2 years ago, zero, just absolutely zero, and it's become just absolutely a game changer for so many things here, right? And that, bank cards, anyway, and plus I think, I would love to be able to think that we could have privacy, but what is privacy? Like, we think privacy is like, oh, like, you know that I went to this apartment in the afternoon when I should have been at a meeting, or maybe you know that I bought this thing on the internet that maybe, you know, I wouldn't want other people to know about. Yeah, that's one level of privacy. But how about, like, in the future, you know, somebody takes my bottle and is easily able to, like, just use their phone and just, like, touch it and just go, okay, he has a 72% chance of dying of heart disease before the age of 60, whatever. It's like, that's that kind of pride, or the ability to have some sort of infrared sensor to know everybody's emotion or, you know, heart rate. Like it's like things are going to be so transparent that any notion of privacy is just, it's just going to go away. Like it's just, I don't even know how it's going to be possible in some ways, unless you're able to, like, have a Faraday cage of lead around your, you know, mountaintop home or something like that, right? There's 4 million STEM grads, so science, technology, you know, engineering and math, and that feeds into the whole startup ecosystem, which I mentioned is the largest startup ecosystem in the world. You know, rivaling even Silicon Valley. So it becomes this sort of, you know, virtuous cycle where, you know, all of these companies are pulling in these engineering students, and then these engineering students are starting their own companies, and then they're inspiring other students to study engineering, and it's you know, it's something that's, you know, made China this really, you know. Yes, indeed, virtuous circle, indeed.
I like you said that is AI here is not in the lab. What's that?
So yeah, so I think, you know, there is AI in the lab here, but the most important part of AI here is in the wild, in the data. Like there's, as Kai-Fu Lee said, this is the Saudi Arabia of data. There's so many hundreds of millions of people leaving digital breadcrumbs, that is actually the entire, like, foundation of how the AI is improved upon, and that's how these companies like Alipay and WeChat and all these super apps are going to be able to, like, go out into other markets and become so successful.
Thank you, and thank you, our cinematographic reporter.
Gentlemen.
Thank you.